Good morning. Welcome back to State of Current Affairs with your hosts. Notice there's two of us who are brave enough to step into the cold water of the Atlantic or the Pacific, depending how one looks at it. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network. Educate, enlighten, and entertain. And State of a Current Affairs will regularly appear on 9:30 p.m. Eastern and 9:30 a.m. Singapore time. Yes. So you can be awake for that. And it's the most intense conversations of our current affairs by Passionate World Talk Radio every Monday and Tuesday. Yes. So we will talk about country, corporation, corruption, great word, power, another good word, property, people, legacy, history, democracy. Well, maybe not for long if Trump gets into power. And the economy with your two well-known, outstanding authors, Viki Chang and Lillian S. The S stands for Sarah. That's silly, Cauldwell. Today we are going to be discussing what's happening in Singapore because most people have a real misconception of Singapore. They think it's isolated from the rest of the world or that China is going to come and visit one day, real soon. But before we go into that, there are two articles that Viki found while looking around for current affairs of the world that she would like to share with our audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, strap yourself in and let's listen. Good morning, Viki.
Good evening, Lillian, and good evening to the rest of the world over there. And for anyone who is in Europe, you are about 6 to 7 hours behind Singapore. So it is 9:15 p.m. Singapore time at about like 3 p.m. In France, in London. Thank you so much, Lillian, for this very quick introduction. And I'm here, your co-host for State of Current Affairs. I'd like everyone to understand that Singapore isn't part of China. It isn't part of Malaysia or Japan. It is an independent, sovereign state, sovereign country on its own, and we are 1 degree north of the equator. You can drive 1.5 hours from the west to the east of Singapore across the island, and the latest popular census showed we are 6.5 million in population only. So you've only got about 6 million people, 6 million Singaporeans and naturalized citizens in the world. So Lillian and your audience and listeners, you are fairly fortunate to have me. So Lillian, we're going to talk about cost of living and the stress of living. And I would like to talk about the lies of the media, the mainstream media, Lillian. And the reason why I love your radio station is it is established, it's been around for the last 20 years, is no holds barred. That's why I like to be here. We can talk about politically correct or politically incorrect substance. Not like my podcast where you have to be politically correct and to be really treading around nuances
We
and
forget historical, that
yeah,
anything goes.
yeah. I mean, I like that. That's why I like to talk. But really, because we are brought up a little bit about our background here in Singapore. We are brought up to be respectful. We are brought up to be respectful of our teachers, our neighbors, people who are different from us, people who are of different shades of color, different shades of hair color, like you and I, different shades of skin color, and different kind of makeup. different kinds of clothes, different language, different faith, religion, different language, different race, and different countries, different nationalities. We are brought up to be respectful. So we brought up, even though we talk about the freedom of speech, but I think we value respect more than anything here because we don't want to upset our neighbors here. We live in a really small country of 6 million people on a little island where people are stacked on top of each other on high rise buildings. So my neighbor is just like 2 meters away. If she opens the door and she spits in my house during COVID, there's nothing I can do. So I better be respectful of her. Lillian, but jokes aside, Lillian, um, I'd like to talk about something that ties us together. Your listeners, my viewers, and your followers, your subscribers, your fans, my followers, and the world over. You know, cost of living. I like to bring up the first article here, right? You can go to this article. Singapore struggles with cost of living. Why shipping has had to look outside Singapore to complete many functions, and also why Singapore ranked as the city with the highest cost of living in the entire world, rivaling Zurich, Switzerland. So Singapore has actually ranked 11 times in the last, I think, 12 years as the most expensive city in the world. And the article goes to explain Singapore ties with Switzerland, and it also talks about the high, even though we've got high employment, we've got high salary, high annual income, high income, and one of the lowest tax rates in the world, people still feel that cost of living is one of the struggles that we're facing right now. And Lillian, I think for you and for the listeners, I'd like to talk about something that we all are looking at in the mainstream media. We are looking at news that says 2.5% inflation rate. 2.7% inflation rate, and they say, oh, we're managing maybe 2.9% inflation rate. Your groceries do not prove when you go into the grocery stores or the supermarkets that it rises 2.7%. And what does 2.7% show in the mainstream? It means that every $100, you only have to pay 2 cents more, right? 1% is a dollar, 2%, yeah, $2 more. So for every $100 you spend, it means that you're paying $1 more. But that's not true, Lillian. We know that inflation has a regressive effect. The richer you are, inflation has a dampening effect. Because imagine, and I'm going to say this in main street language, Lillian. Why do you and I feel the pinch in our pocket, even though the main stream media says inflation is only 2.7? I'm going to explain to everyone. I'm going to explain to everyone the lies of the mainstream media and the data from the Central Economics Board of your country and my country and every country. Um, when they take the basket of goods, they look at cars, expensive cars, luxury, real estate, land price, food, of course. However, when it comes to main street people like you and I, for example, we take back $100 in our pocket per month if we've got $100 per month, and we go to the grocery supermarket with $100. And if the price of your beef rises from $10 to $20, so you spend, instead of $90, now you only have got $80 left because you spent $20 on your beef. You understand? So that's
Oh, absolutely.
inflation. Yeah. So that's inflation of your beef of 100% from $10 to $20, and your pocket that had only $100, which was supposed to to have left with $90. Now you're left with $80. Now then you walk down the aisle of the supermarket, right? And then you try to buy your eggs. And your eggs was maybe in Singapore during the pandemic times, you've got like 30 eggs for $3, but now they cost $8. My God, that's like 200%. It's more than
Yeah.
200% price of the eggs. So when you go and walk down the aisle with $100 in your pocket, you've got $100, and now you've got only $80 left because you bought the beef, and then you walk down the aisle, and the eggs was that used to cost you $3 now cost you $9 or $10, and suddenly you've only got like $7, $70 left. What's your
Yeah.
inflation? What's your inflation to you
Absolutely.
as a mother? So that's why I'm just going to tell everyone, even though the newspapers and the megaphones of the mainstream media tells you the inflation rate is 2.5%, and they say that they're managing it now, it's 2.7. Oh, it's going down, it's 2.3. Oh, it's going down, it's 2. It's a total lie, because that's the basket of goods they are measuring with, the super yachts, the Teslas, and then you've got the cars and real estates, and they've got the Trump um, Plaza building rental right out there, and they say that the increase in total is only 2%. So that's a total lie, because that's not representative of the main street, maybe 80% of the population. So the 80% of the population feels the strain of 30% to 40% inflation, because that's what they have in the pocket when they go down the aisle. So inflation has a steep regressive effect on people like us, because for us the tax of inflation is so huge, it's almost up to like 40-50%, and then you still can't figure out why does the media says it's 2%, and yet at the end of the month I've got nothing left. So now I'm just going to like demystify inflation and the cost of living, and we have got to raise up as the world, not just as a country, because it really spreads from the US to Singapore to Europe. I'm hearing it from my friends in France. The prices are just
Absolutely.
going
Folks, when
all
you
the
go in the
way,
supermarket,
yes, to the roof, because it's a lie told to the main street people like us, because we do not own that half
absolutely.
a billion dollar cost of the yacht out there, because we have only got $100 worth of pocket money for groceries for the week, and $100 which used to cost that basket of goods has now shrunk to one third. So if you could buy that $100 worth that is this much, and at the end of the week, you only found that you could get the same amount for the same amount of money, this amount, you have got up to 50% inflation for you. So we have got to raise this, Lillian, and I'm going to say that state of our current affairs. You've got to vote for whatever anyone. I mean, we've got to vote for the truth, Lillian. I don't care which country you are. I don't care which nation you are. We have just got to vote with the truth, for the truth, because only the truth can let us feel that kind of living in honesty. We are not disenfranchised. We are not being lied to. We are not being um, cheated of living. You know, again and again, the main street media is just telling us your inflation is only 2%. Now shut up, right? So I don't understand, right? How could they
Yes.
measure it at 2% or 2.9%? When to me, inflation is like 50% or even more. So you need,
Yes.
if your cost of living was, you needed $2,000 to survive, for your cost of living at that level, for I would just say at that level, which is at the level of dignity, okay, which means that you do not have to navigate cutting vouchers, you do not have to navigate looking at the shopping center. You could just buy and at least get a decent meal in a decent restaurant, living a decent life. But if you find that you are struggling with that, you become highly stressed because you're navigating, you're trying to find a way that keeps you still in that kind of living quality that was pre-pandemic times, then you are in highly stressed world. And because you are in a highly stressed world, you know what happens, Lillian? People are going out in the streets, fighting in the streets, and then there you find people rioting in the streets or just killing people in the streets because people are fed up. People are, they feel that they can't get out. They feel that they're stuck and they can't imagine why they're stuck, Lillian. A lot of people don't understand why they're frustrated. A lot of people don't understand. But we have got to tell them why you are feeling frustrated. That's why podcasts and radio programs like that is important, Lillian, because people are putting us in a very stuck position and lying to us. If they tell us the truth and tell us that, yes, we're managing inflation because inflation rate to every strata of the economy is different. That's why you're feeling stressed. That's why when you navigate in the shopping grocery supermarket, you're feeling stressed, and the mother feels stressed. The mother beat up the child, and when the child can't get the chocolate, that the child tries to get the chocolate every week, the child gets angry and the child cries. And when the child goes back home, the child can't get the chocolate, it cries, and it affects the relationship between the mother and the father. And when the child start crying, the mother start hitting the child, and the father says, "Why are you hitting the child?" And the mother gets angry, and the fight starts, and they feel angry. Now I'm just gonna say everything starts with money, everything, and I'm not saying it doesn't start with other things, but the thing that the most stress in the whole wide world right now is the struggle with the cost of living. And if you find that you are paying the rent $1,000 before and you're paying it three times right now, in many countries like in Singapore, you get stressed. And you'll find that you got to take up three jobs. And then you do not know why you're stressed. And you do not know why you're fighting with your boyfriend. So, Lillian, I'm just going to demystify. I hope I'm getting it right across to the Pacific to tell you why we are stuck, because we are being lied to. And I can't say this in my podcast because I've got to be so politically correct, because we are not told the truth, Lillian. We are told lies
Mm-mm.
upon lies upon lies. So, Lillian, I am glad that we have brought this program, State of Current Affairs, to Passionate World Talk Radio, and that people should tune in and people should listen up and to write to you, Lillian Sarah Cardwell, to tell you how frustrated, how stuck they are, how angry they are with their lives. And then we try to demystify and try to find out the formula. Was it 1 plus 1 equals 5 or 1 plus 1 equals 0.5 now?
And the email to reach us at gmail.com. And just to add a side comment is telling you, the other day I went into the supermarket to buy 8-pack of toilet paper and
Yeah,
3 pounds of coffee. I bet
yeah.
you can't guess how much I paid for that. And if you
Um,
say more than $25, you are correct. I paid
you,
$35 for 2 items. Think about that. Plus, there's shortages in the supermarket of certain items. In fact, there was an article this morning saying there are 10 items that people can no longer afford to buy in the
Like what?
supermarket and they don't buy them, which is bad for the store owners because they don't want to acknowledge that the
Yes.
reason why it's so expensive is a little part of inflation and more of a part of I am greedy and I have the power to get as much money out of you as I possibly can. That's huge.
Profiteering. Yes. Yeah, I mean, you are right, Lillian. Now, Lillian, you're absolutely right, but I want to further explain a little bit from economics point of view. From Singapore, to your listeners and to many countries also, there's something that is unseen from the economics world, and from the retail world. Like as we walk into a shopping center, the only thing that we see is the price tag, right? And of course the price tag reflects the quantity and hopefully the quality of the food. Right now it doesn't even reflect the quality, and it doesn't
Yes,
even reflect the quantity of the food. I mean, a lot of it is just air on nitrogen in the packet. It's not even oxygen, right? So I'm just gonna explain to everyone
absolutely.
why Singapore is the, and I'm saying the is number one most expensive country in the world. I'm saying that because it's already shown when it comes to rent, the basket of goods, fuel, car, rental, it's most expensive. And of course on certain parts of the world some part of the benchmark goes up, but the total basket of goods Singapore is most expensive. Now I'm actually explaining why, and explaining why so that you can, the listeners and the viewers can extrapolate and say, hey, maybe some of these concepts actually applies to my country or my city. For example, Singapore is an island that is overpopulated, highly dense, one of the most densest countries in the world. It's really small, and of course, we can't compare with the Vatican. It's a standalone country, recognized sovereign state, the Vatican City. But we are really talking about free flow of people coming in and out the country, and because it is highly populated, 6 million people on a little island, we've got nothing that we are grown. That's why farmers are important. I think one of the speeches I heard Trump says, you got to take care of our farmers, right? And I truly agree. Agriculture is number one. That's where you get your food source. Unlike, unluckily, and unfortunately, and we can't get away from that in Singapore, is we've got no land for agriculture because every centimeter, every square foot, and every square meter is taken up by concrete, because we are building upwards. So there is, yes, there is some trees here because we are trying so much to green the place, because without greenery we all go crazy. But we are building ourselves upwards. There's no place for agriculture. So think about this, Lillian, and ladies and gentlemen, this may apply to you. You've got grains from Ukraine, right? Ukraine is shipping 40% of the grains out. I mean, it supplies 40% of certain grains to the rest of the world. Ukraine, and I'm talking about Ukraine, right? I mean, Russia exports 80% of its gas to Europe, right? But I want to say that just imagine your city, your country, if you're living in a non-agricultural city like me, Singapore, we've got to ship the grains from Ukraine. We've got to ship the cookies from America. Some of these American muffins. We've got to ship um, the fish fingers from America. We've got to ship the fries, the frozen fries from the US. We've got to ship the rice from Thailand. We've got to ship the grains from China. We've got to ship the fruits from Europe, from Australia to a little island. Now think about that. Before the pandemic, oil was going up, and you've got different supply chain that needs the fuel. And then if you could read the disruption of the supply chain right now, that they are being stuck because they are being bombed in Middle East. um, there is a cost, a cumulative effect, cost upon cost, that is compounded on each trip. And each trip, they need to get another supplier, another shipment, another company. And you've got to pay a premium above the service, above the fuel before it arrives here. And then it arrives here. This is a tropical country. It needs to be housed in cold stores, refrigerators, the size of huge houses. And that's energy, right? I think this is the huge thing in America, right? Energy, food. Now think about that. We've got nothing that is grown here. We depend on the grains from Ukraine, from Malaysia, from Thailand, from China. We depend on the cookies from US, butter from Australia, from Europe, Switzerland, and fruits from every part of the world. So when it arrives to a little island here, things are being compounded. You suddenly find that there is such an accumulative effect that it is called imported inflation. And we can't get away from that imported inflation. And this is something unseen behind economics and behind the retailer's eyes, behind consumers' eyes, because it's there happening in the war zone and the bombing in Middle East right now, and the
Yeah.
ships that is being bombed and the ships that is sinking. So, there's a lot of cumulative effect that we think our world is divided, but yet our fate is tied. When something happens in Russia, it happens right here in Singapore. Some things happen in US. If you've got a general election now, no, we when you catch a cold, I think we're gonna have a big fever here. We fall really sick here in Singapore. So things are struggling here in terms of prices, and I think people are just suffering in terms of being very quiet, because number one, we are told and we are taught and we are brainwashed to be quiet, right? Number two,
Right.
that part of our brain somehow is just paralyzed. That thinking part, that
Yeah.
questioning part, that
Yeah.
looking around part, and that kind of the seeking part is paralyzed somehow. I don't know why. Can you please tell and enlighten us why? And also, because of this main stream media that keeps pounding and pounding and pounding that you've got like 2% inflation, and we kind of just accepts it. So Lillian, over to you. But this is something that I want to say in terms of the food prices you see in the supermarket, that I see such a big thing in your American general election right now. People are just asking your president, Vice President Kamala Harris, what she gonna do for food prices, and then they also ask the same thing to Donald Trump. I think they have not given the people a good answer, and I think that we should start, as the world, start demanding prices to come down and everything to come down for us, because wages are not increasing, but everything else increasing, and job security is being taken away. Over to Liu Lilin. So that's I'm just gonna say that's the most intense conversation.
It is. And it is intense because people have a tendency to ignore or
Yeah,
not discuss things that are unpleasant, that scare them. I'm not that way. The more scared I get, the more I tend to blather and ask questions. For example, it is now written that a large majority of the world are scared about our potential water sources. But the problem is, we've been polluting our water sources since World War II. And we're the only ones to blame if we can't find any pure, clean water. When I go over to Facebook, for example, and I take a look at some of the political cartoons, there's one there that really caught my attention. And I found it quite ironic in a humorous manner. And I will share it to you. It's a view of the beach with the ocean, and a cat is saying to the dog, they're always yelling at us to clean up our litter boxes. And then they both look out over the ocean, and it's full of waste products, plastic, paper, medical supplies,
Yeah. Medical supply.
garbage. And of course, the irony is in a litter box, you need to clean it up. Or when you
Yeah.
go out to take your dog for a walk, you need to clean him up and the waste that he deposits somewhere. But no one, until very recently, in the past, I would say 3 years, really cared very much about what they dumped into all the oceans. So now we have 2 miles of waste floating around
Really?
in the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean. And you see pictures of whales and seals and sharks and all the marine creatures,
Intoxicated.
turtles,
Intoxicated.
intoxicated, or worse, they have been. They managed to get this waste, especially the plastic that holds bottles together, wrapped around them, so they drown. But humans caused that problem in the first place. So it's
Yes.
ironic that civilization itself is saying we're afraid that our water sources are tainted and contaminated when we're the ones who did it, not the
Yes.
aliens from outer
Yeah.
space.
I totally echo that, Lillian, because I've got some things to say, and we could if we could bring this up tomorrow also, but I would like to um, really echo that because I did a lot of studies on the environment and the pollution of the environment. Now, if you were to talk about water, I've got so much things to say. I'm just gonna say to relate to you and to relate to the world. Now, Singapore, because it's an island, again, we've got no natural reservoirs. We've got no mountains, so we actually purchase our water from neighboring countries, and the neighboring countries sometimes threaten to cut it off. So when you cut off water, what happens to the island of
You
people, right?
die.
Without water, die. So
Without water,
that's a
one
national
dies.
that's a national security issue here. Not only a survival issue, national security issue, and also we learned to use technology to try to convert water vapor into drinking water. But even though I'm just gonna say um, we've got so much technology, but the technology has not gone into solving the real problem of the world. If we talk about water sources um, and the plastic pollution in the world, think about that impact, Lillian. It's not just about the trash washed up. Think about the pollution, the mercury, the lead,
Oh, the mercury, the
the micro
oil,
the yes
the
the
gasoline.
microplastics that goes into the fish,
Yes.
and they're gonna be there forever and ever for the next 500, 600, 5,000 years before the atomic bomb comes, and your children
Are going to
is
eat that.
going
You're
to eat
eating it
that.
right now.
Yes. So
So
that's
think
what
about
I'm
that.
saying. That I am already trying to avoid fish because I try to be macrobiotic, avoiding all kinds of meat. I try to get as little fish as possible, and I'm trying to get as much vegetable as possible. And now I'm trying to get as little vegetable. I'm trying to survive on
It
air.
doesn't matter. We have done such a thorough job of contaminating
Yeah.
our earth and the soil. I
Yeah,
don't know what happens in Singapore, but over here, the recalls of vegetables and
it's
fruit,
bad. Yeah,
flour,
I
it's
know.
all bad.
Yeah, the
It doesn't
Listeria,
matter whether
the E.
it's
coli.
organic
I
or
would love to talk
using.
about food. I know that I would love to talk about this. Lillian, I've got an audience in you. I'm so glad because this is big thing. This is
This
big.
is
This
big
is
thing,
huge.
and we're
But nobody is
handling.
really, really talking about it and
No,
shouting it
because
out.
it's off the list, big white elephant, at least a
It is,
herd inside
yes.
that living room.
And the thing is, Lillian, let's just go back to the plastics in the ocean, and not just that, but think about the electronic waste that is being dumped.
Oh
Think
yeah,
about that.
let's go there. I mean, or even the
I
litholant
you the thing
that
is that
is no longer available.
people don't look around, and people don't even read on the internet because they just are so consumed by TikTok and by the cooking shows, which I've got.
Instagram.
I'm not against entertainment, of course, because I do need entertainment for de-stress. But I'm just saying that we have stopped thinking, we have stopped looking, and we have stopped researching because we have the capability to do that, but somehow we are just paralyzed, or we just make ourselves paralyzed or numbed to real things around us. That's why I want to bring this up, Lillian. I know I've taken up a lot of your time and a lot of viewers' time, but today let's talk a little bit about um, what you just talked about, water. Um, think about water that is already contaminated underground, and that's never going to be taken out.
And never
Um,
that. In
yeah,
fact, folks, if you're not aware, there are several countries now in South America that they have to pay the emitters to get their water. Otherwise, they don't receive any. It's not free. Who would have guessed that Western nations would pay for water? Well, we're doing that already, but we're talking about water to wash with. We're talking about water that is put into baby formula. We're talking about water that is going to get those plants to grow. We're not
or wash
just
your
talking
dishes.
about
You need water to
washing
wash
dishes.
your
This
dishes.
is, I mean, we're
You
not
need
talking about
clean water to
water,
wash your dishes.
yes,
You don't want
or
contaminated
laundry.
water you don't want contaminated water for your vegetable to be washed,
In
for
fact,
your
they've
kitchen.
proven, the
I mean,
scientists, that you
yeah.
cannot wash your vegetables with soap and water or fruits, and it
Yeah,
won't get rid of the pesticides
because it's already
that
grown in
have
there.
leaked into the fruit. So,
They
where does that leave us, ladies and
yeah,
gentlemen?
yeah. You know what? I really am so thankful for this uh, state of current affairs with Lillian, yourself at Passionate World Talk Radio, because I can't speak like that in my own podcast.
I can.
I can't
People
speak.
have not
That's
used to
why
me
I'd like to
saying
come
things
to
like
you.
this.
I like to come to Passionate World Talk Radio because I can't speak like that in my own podcast because I'm not allowed. I'll be cut.
Well,
My internet will be remotely cut.
yes, I
My
understand that.
Wi-Fi, my data will be remotely cut. So I would like to talk about contamination of our oceans, and why and who is not doing their job. And not only the people like Lillian, you've identified, like we are putting our trash out there, but there are in Singapore, there is something called the environmental agency, which I think many
Yeah, we
countries
got
have.
one of those too, but I don't think too many people pay that much attention to it. I know the large
Yeah,
corporations don't. They sort of go
yeah,
to them
yeah.
all.
So I hope that I will bring that in tomorrow, and
We should
tell
do that.
you tell you to vote for your people and for your country, the people who do take care of the environment, and also for people who actually do make who do their jobs in the sector the government jobs, that they do make policies that clean up your beach. They do make policies that incinerate and collect the trash around in a collective institutional method, so that they're actually being placed in a huge macro way, so that they are incinerated, packed, or recycled, and not just thrown into the ocean because it is unseen and is the cheapest form of trash, garbage truck, because you just throw into the ocean and you don't need to do anything because nobody sees it and nobody says anything.
Let me
So
add one
Lillian,
thing.
this is truly intense. I love it, Lillian.
Let me add one thing. We now have garbage left in space by everyone's
Oh yes,
astronauts
because nobody
that are
cares.
now orbiting our planet.
Yeah,
So if a
yeah,
banana peel falls out of the sky one day, or other assorted garbage, paper,
yeah,
plastic, a refrigerator, an old stove, maybe a
yeah,
Cadillac, blame it on yourself. Because,
yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, humans create their own messes. But like little babies, someone else is relied upon to clean it up.
Yeah, and I like to say, to in order to echo you, and in order to agree with you, awareness, understanding, education. There's no excuse, but it should start with awareness and understanding, and then taking the action and making that change. So, Lillian, over to you. I
On
wanted to
that
share the
note,
second. Yeah, I wanted to share the second article, but I think this has gone too intense. But I love that because we got to tell the truth. We got to cut to the chase. We've got to get to the truth of the matter to the audience, because we are responsible, as a podcaster and yourself, being in the media for all these years, Lillian, hats off to you. And thanks to you, there's the truth out there for the audience and the listeners, Lillian. And thanks to Passionate World Talk Radio, we don't have to be politically correct. We can tell the truth.
we have to. We have to acknowledge that we are our own worst enemy. And either we're going to do something about it collectively. Folks, we don't need the atomic bomb. We're doing such a good job all by ourselves with pollution, global warming, ignorance. Think about it. The powers to be talk about the atomic bomb as if it's an everyday affair. And they all get to go into their fancy bunkers wherever they are. I got bad news for you. The strength of the bombs that Russia and the US now have is not going to allow you to stray out of that bunker for the next 1,000 years, if not sooner or later. So instead of planning for the ultimate extermination of our race, may I suggest, as a closing note for today's program, that the state of the current affairs has come to you and is demanding that you do something and clean up the mess that we created. I want to thank you for joining me, Lillian Cauldwell, and my co-host or backseat driver, depending which way you're looking at it, Viki Esther Chang, and join us tomorrow morning at 9:30, either in the morning at Warnersville, Pennsylvania, right outside the infamous Monopoly Reading on the board, or 9:30 p.m. from Singapore, where even the rich have to count their pennies. I also want to tell you that you can go and see this program all over again on youtube.com/Passionate World Radio, Passionate World Talk Radio. Also on our website, https:// passionateworldtalkradio.com /blog You should be able to find it. It's in there, as Wendy's commercials say. And you can also see it and hear it all over our social media websites: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. You guys know the drill. You don't need me to tell you. This program is also brought to you by Passionate World Talk Radio with the Obstacles of Podcast Training 2-month course. Check us out at https:// education.passionateworldtalkradio.com/masterclass and listen to the masters, Lillian Cauldwell and Viki Chang, tell you how it's done. Whether you're junior high, high school, college, university, junior college, community college, charter school, private school, doesn't matter, beginner, intermediate, expert, or you want to go the extra step, we're the girls to do it. Although I shouldn't say girls, we are the ladies to do it. Woman power. Yes, we were brought up during Gloria Steinem's era. I'm sure you remember that. And also by myflex.com, esc73.tryruby.ai. And yes, there's an https:// It provides you with a demo that you can play with and then sign up monthly, anywhere from $20. And yes, the more you put into it and invest, the more you get out of it. What I call one-stop shopping with AI, artificial intelligence, that is approachable, meaning that there is mind to mind. And that can be part of mindfulness. Yeah. So have a good day. Sleep well for those over in Singapore, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.